howdy, Colonel.
Hello. Hello. I can see your beautiful face. Now I can hear your beautiful voice. I just got my headphones on.
I've been hanging out too long this week.
Well, I was going to say a very busy weekend. So we were very lucky. I had several of the out-of-state listeners emailed me over the weekend that said, hey, I saw you guys are doing something this weekend. Obviously, I won't be able to attend because I live all the way over here. I'm hoping to hear...
Japan.
Yeah, I'm hoping to hear about whatever you guys do this weekend on Off the Record. So made me feel good about several things. One being that people are interested in the things we're doing off the show, but also we keep getting lots of praise for this show Off the Record, which we are very much enjoying. So thank you for the great feedback. What we did this weekend, we went to the Ohio History Center, and there we gave two presentations on the Sam Shepard case, which is one of the more famous cases from Ohio. Mm-hmm. And it's an old case. It's an unsolved case. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't remember is that according to the courts here, Sam Shepard did not kill his wife, or at least was once convicted, but then the conviction thrown out.
10 years in jail.
So,
and F. Lee Bailey comes in and gets him out.
And the event that we were a part of, we were kind of a small part of the Ohio Crime and Corruption event. It was the first year that they've done such an event, and they're hoping to do it again next year. We're hoping to be, once again, a part of it, and maybe more of the listeners come out. We had a great crowd this year, and the thing that I loved was people were eager to raise their hand and ask questions about the Sam Shepard case and ask us questions about True Crime Garage and me and you and everything else. Now, we didn't have the setup there to record because the thought would be much like we did with the podcast festival with the Brian Schaefer case, our discussion there. Mm-hmm. Just record it, throw it on here off the record for people out of town and out of state to get to be a part of that, to listen in on the good discussion that we had. Well, our intentions were to kind of cover that and talk about it and go through that here today, but something even more exciting and more wonderful happened between that period on Saturday and before we could get in the garage today.
What could be more wonderful
than us
talking?
An arrest in a cold case that we covered, a case that you and I have been angry about, but excited to see that they finally made an arrest in this case, and we're talking about April Tinsley, for those of you who have not heard the news.
Yeah, I was getting my bike fixed yesterday. And I got a text message from my good friend Stephanie, and Stephanie CrossFit, I'll call her, but she's from Indianapolis, and she sent me a screenshot from her mom actually posted that, there's been a break in this case. So, that's what's so awesome is whether it's a friend or through social media, anytime there's a break or anytime there's some immediate information that I need true crime world-wise, I get it from the listeners.
Well, in a conversation that you and I have had many times about throwing good, positive things out into the universe, out into the stratosphere, and sometimes good, positive things come of that energy that we put out from time to time. And maybe us covering the case had something to do with it. One thing that was interesting to me, too, which just strange coincidence, is after one of our presentations on Sam Shepard, we were chatting with people in the audience afterward, and one listener asked me, hey, do you have any updates on the April Tinsley case, or do you expect any updates soon? And we got to talking about the case for a while. Turns out she was from, or is from, I should say, Northwest Ohio. So this is a case that's close to her, Fort Wayne, Indiana, not being far from, I'm guessing, where she lives. But I told her, I said, look, there's no updates as far as I know. But my suspicion is this. I said, with what's going on, and with this case in particular, because there was so much DNA collected in this case, I told her, I said, I actually expect this thing to be solved within the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, yeah, and what's crazy is I kind of overheard this conversation, and I hear you say, I expect this to be solved. And I kind of thought, That's interesting. This kind of pretty bold statement.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got the text message the following day, I thought, oh, shit, how did he know?
Well, it was just speculation on my part. And here's the thought. Okay, so we saw this with the Golden State Killer. We saw this with other cases throughout the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw it yesterday with the arrest of John D. Miller, who is suspected of having killed April Tinsley. And we'll go through that and kind of update you on what we know about the arrest in just a minute. But my thought, my speculation is this. Because what we're seeing with the new way that they're using DNA and using tools to kind of find DNA, talking mainly about the genealogy sites, some of them being public, some of them being private, but some of these are getting used and utilized in a way that they might not be able to track down the suspect or the person that left the DNA at the scene, but they're tracking down relatives of this person and then honing in on the relatives and figuring out, sifting through information and finding who left that DNA at the scene. And I think that this is incredible because I think we are going to be living in the golden age of solving cold cases.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, I think it's going to be rapid fire. It's going to be like once a month.
Shabam!
You're going to hear about some old case that we thought may never get solved, something 20 years, 25, 30 years old that police have been working on. And guess what? Boom. They're going to get an arrest.
And if somebody asked me, like, top 5 cases that I'd like to have solved, April Tinsley's case is definitely up there.
Yes, certainly. So to kind of go quickly through that case for those of you that aren't familiar, we did cover this fairly extensively in episode 7. We were very young.
So
the garage was...
We apologize for our lack of knowing what the hell we're doing.
Well, I think it was episode 7 of ours, and this was a case that on April 4th, 1988, the Indiana State Police and the local DeKalb County Sheriff's Department, they were called in to a young girl's body that was found in a ditch there. Okay, this was off of County Road 68. Now, the way that this went down was this poor girl, April Tinsley, she was abducted near her home just days earlier. And there were eyewitness reports of who may have taken her. And if I recall correctly, I think that they thought maybe some kind of van was used in this abduction. And,
yeah, there was definitely a creeper van in this story.
And we had talked often about could it have been a utility worker or some kind of delivery route person that had picked her up. So she was abducted on April 1st, 1988, and her body was found April 4th, 1988. And it was her parents that had reported her missing around 3 p.m. on April 1st. So the police recover her body on the 4th, and they also found what they believe to be her shoe. One of her shoes. They found this about 1,000 feet west of where they found her body.
Yeah.
It matches the shoe that was still on her foot at the time. Now, the case doesn't stop there. It gets more strange as this goes on because on May 21st, 1990, police were called to a barn. This was on Schwartz Road and Indiana Route 37. They found like writing that appeared to show the suspected killer taking credit for killing April Tinsley. And a portion of the note said, "I kill 8-year-old April M. Tinsley. Did you find her other shoe? Ha ha ha, I will kill again."
Yeah.
And then in 2004, police were sent to 3 different locations. And at these locations, they recovered used condoms at each location. Now, along with the condoms, police also found notes, this again taunting the police and taunting the community that this individual is taking credit for abducting, raping, and killing April Tinsley.
Well, and we had the DNA profile of the individual, right? At some point, they took the DNA that they had and they made like a computer composite sketch.
Yeah, and this is interesting because we've seen this done in other cases. And what they did here was this this loser, this scumbag, decides to taunt the police in the community years after the murders. Well, those used condoms that they found in those 3 different locations, they matched DNA evidence that was collected from articles of clothing that April Tinsley was wearing when she was found dead in that ditch. Okay, so they knew that these taunts were coming from the killer. The killer and this person is one and the same. This is a unique case, Captain, because we're talking about, because of these 2 separate incidences, the finding of the body and then later the taunting, we have a lot of, not to be gross, but we have a lot of DNA evidence in this particular situation. And that's why
a lot of evidence.
Well, and I hated that I said that to the lady that I spoke with on Saturday, but I said to him, I said to her, I said, that's why I think this one is going to be one of the first ones. You know, one that could be solved very soon, is because we know that there was DNA collected, and we know that they have enough of a sample that they probably have good samples to still test and find the donor of that DNA still to this day.
Right.
And it was like 2 months ago from what I read. Now, mind you, this is like breaking news. This happened at what? You texted me, I think, at 1 o'clock yesterday, 1 in the afternoon. And it was so weird because you and I had something else going on that we won't talk about here. But I assumed you were texting me regarding that matter. And I looked at my text, and you had sent, there was a picture in there stating update. And man, I get freaking excited when I see that, because I was like, shit, this is something. The captain's found something good, and he's updating me. Something good is happening.
Stephanie did, but yeah.
However it gets to me. Thank you, Stephanie.
I don't care how it gets to me, as long as it gets to me.
It brightened my day, man. I was out working hard yesterday, and I wanted to have like a celebratory drink and cigar after that.
I did.
That's how good I felt about this case. And
well, and it's also, week in and week out, and then like normally, a little behind the scenes, and we record normally, twice a week together. We hang out in the garage, and then we don't talk a lot on the phone because our conversations tend to lead towards cases and different stuff in true crime world. And so it's difficult to talk about these cases and these people going missing and cases not being solved, or even the cases that were solved, because you have a victim that lost their life. It gets dark. And if you're around it all the time, or in this case, this last week, we got to throw on an extra day, other than recording and other than the research. We got to throw on an extra day to talk about a case that we haven't talked about in a couple years.
Right.
And so to have all that darkness, to have these things like the Golden State Killer finally be, that's a case that I just got into. My friend was super into it. Morgan was super into it. We'd sit there and drink beers by his fire, and he'd tell me all about the Golden State Killer. And then all of a sudden, boom, shabam, solved. And then in this case too, we have, it was a nice day to meet fans and to have somebody travel a couple hours to meet you. That's awesome. And that's uplifting, but it's another day of talking about a murder that is technically not solved. And then the next day, shabam, we get another, it's almost like a ray of light, if that makes any sense.
And it feels in a way like a weight has been lifted, doesn't it? Because like we have this just piles of cases and cases and cases and cases that we've covered. And now we get to take one off of that pile and put it elsewhere. We need to start like a solved file. So we're like, here you go, put these ones over here. Cause we've had the missing,
solved since we started.
Right.
Yeah.
So the missing Welch girls was one that has been recently, there was an arrest. And that one looks like it's solved. Now, to be clear, though, regarding this individual, John D. Miller, this is the individual that they have arrested and believed is the killer of April Tinsley. The way that this works is they used like genealogy and stuff like that to kind of hone in on this individual, and they actually locked in on more than just him. It was him and at least one other relative. Now, this is information that's less than 24 hours old So let's keep that in mind. The newspapers could have it wrong. But from my understanding, what's going on with this case is they arrested John D. Miller on a probable cause warrant. Mm-hmm. And what that means, we've talked about this before, but from my understanding, Captain, what that means is we don't have a warrant from maybe the prosecutor's office, but we have enough in-house evidence against somebody that we're going to go arrest them on probable cause, because you have to do these probable cause warrants on occasion. They're not often, but you do it when you think somebody is so dangerous we need to get them off of the streets immediately. We can't wait to take this to a judge and get an official deal here. So what that means is there's been no indictment by a grand jury at this point. At some point, a grand jury will have to indict this guy, and that's when they will have the quote-unquote official charges against John D. Miller. Now, what they did was they honed in on this dude, and they were able to eliminate the other person that he's related to, somebody that has similar DNA as him.
Right.
Because what they did was they followed this dude around, and when he wasn't so aware, they collected some items from his trash. Okay, they take these items, they test these items, and they find that his DNA, the DNA that he left on items discarded from his home, matched the DNA that they found on April Tinsley's underwear.
Right.
Okay?
Sick.
So
son of a bitch.
They were able to make this arrest, and I believe the arrest was yesterday. And today they will walk him into court and try to file official charges. Now, from what I heard and what I've been able to find online is not only did they arrest this dude, but when they approached him and they said, hey, look, we need to talk to you. Do you know why we would want to talk to you? Miller reportedly said April Tinsley. So then they take him to police headquarters. They interview him. Mm-hmm. And at first, he's not saying much. He's not giving anything up. Eventually, he decides to explain what happened to April Tinsley. And allegedly, he confessed to abducting and murdering her. Right. Now, he says that he took her from the street near her home, and he took her back to his Fort Wayne mobile home. Okay? Now, we know that she was dumped closer to that area, closer to his home than to her home. He says there at his home, he sexually assaulted her, and then he choked her to death. He said that he killed her just so she wouldn't report him to police.
Right.
I'm unclear if the two would have known each other. What it sounds to me like, Captain, and one reason why this may have gone unsolved for so long is I think this was likely a very random abduction.
Right.
I think this sicko was cruising the streets. I think he had it in his mind that he might abduct somebody and sexually assault them. And I think their paths just happened to cross. And I think he saw a young, small victim that he could easily take. And I think that's what he did. I think he jumped out of his vehicle. I couldn't get any information on what kind of vehicle he may have had at the time to confirm if the eyewitness saw the right and reported the right vehicle, because we did have some vehicle information that we went through when we covered the case. But he said that on the morning of April 2nd, now, again, this is allegedly, he said that he drove and dumped her body where it was later found. Now, by the next day, he had seen and heard no news reports about anybody, about the case or about anybody finding the body. So he decided he was going to drive back by it. Well, now we have an idea of what was going on with the shoe, because remember we said there was one shoe found on her person. The other one was found about 1,000 feet away. Well, that was because after he dumped her body, he realized that one of the shoes either had fallen off or for some reason was still in his car. So when he drove back by the body, sometimes these dudes can't stop themselves. They drive back by just to see if it's still there. And that's likely what he did. And he said that when he was driving by the body, he tossed the shoe out the window at some point.
Well, right, because after the crime, this is going to weigh on this person heavily. Mm-hmm. That's why they're going to drive by and see if there's a body or not. And that's also probably why when police come up to him after all these years, after the Golden State Killer was caught, right? Mm-hmm. It's probably weighing on his head like, they have They have me. They just have to find me, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have this footprint, not a footprint, but I mean DNA, but it's almost like this like key. Like we have the key. We just need to find the other matching key. And then they did so, and I think he kind of knew it. And and I don't want to applaud him for confessing, but that also makes the process a little bit easier. I mean, he could obviously try to fight things, but I think after all this time, and he's 59 now,
mm-hmm.
so he would have been.
Well, it was 30 years ago, approximately, right?
Right, so he would have been 30.
He would have been 29-ish.
Yeah. That's garage math for you.
So he would have been 29 at the time. It sounds to me like he was living alone at the time, and it also, according to the reports I found, when he was arrested this weekend, he was living alone in a mobile home. I'm unclear if it's the same mobile home, but the general description of the two sounds like he might have been living in the same mobile home, or at least the same mobile home park, all of these years, for 30 years. And one thing we speculated when we covered the case was that it appeared that this individual had some kind of location that he could take the victim to and keep her there for some portion of time.
Mm-hmm.
And we had questioned, does that mean that this individual lives alone, or because it was I'm going off of memory here, man, but I think it was a holiday weekend that weekend. And we suspected maybe whoever this perpetrator was, maybe the people that he lived with were going to be out of town because of the holiday that weekend, or was in town because of the holiday. And it turns out, in fact, he was living alone at the time.
You find this weird, like when they arrested D'Angelo, Golden State Killer. Like when you see a image of him, he just looks like a grandpa.
Right.
And then sometimes, like with this individual,
he looks like a monster. John D. Miller.
He just looks
like a ghoul or a.
I mean, he just looks like if you were walking down the street, and see, he has a turtle suit on, and his do you know what a turtle suit is?
A turtle suit. That's the shell, so he doesn't get shot.
No. This is called a turtle suit. They put he must have did a hunger strike, or he must have threatened suicide, or they might have thought that there was a possibility of suicide, and he's stripped down naked, and they put a turtle suit on him
for his own safety, so he doesn't harm himself.
Yeah, so I'm guessing, this is just pure speculation, but I'm guessing that they pull him in and they question him. He probably confessed. Might have seemed like he was,
remorseful,
maybe a little bit, and then maybe he was. I'm just saying that there's some reason that they put this turtle suit on him.
It could be protocol. It could be protocol for.
No, I don't think. No.
This is a murder charge. They may have certain protocol for the first 24, 48 hours of a murder charge.
Yeah, you might be right on that.
And here's the thing: what's interesting is today when they march into court, and actually. They may have already done so, would be my guess, because usually here in Columbus, I should say Franklin County, it seems like when these people are arrested over the weekend and then they have to go to court, face arraignment or whatever it is on that Monday, it seems to me like here in Franklin County that usually goes down between like 9 a.m. and by like 1 p.m. they're kind of done with that. So. Right. I don't know if they've already arraigned this guy by now, but what I've been told is that what they're marching into court with, not only their suspect in handcuffs, which bravo for that, but they're also marching into court with the DNA evidence, I'm sure some other evidence as well, and that alleged confession that he gave to police. So I think this thing's going to very quickly turn from these. And forgive me if I got this wrong, but like I said, we're reporting on stuff that's happened 24 hours ago. And so...
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it reporting. We're just talking.
We're passing this along. What we've been able to find and what we've heard is that my understanding, I think this probable cause charges are very quickly switched to official charges.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing that we speculated when we talked about this case, man, if it was our 7th episode, I got to believe that would have been late 2015 that we would have released that.
Yeah, it's really confusing, when talking to listeners, because I think we recorded about 6 episodes or so that we kind of set on. Where we recorded them, and then there was a break before we decided to start recording again and then releasing them to the public, because when we started, it really was just like we've said a million times, let's just see if we can do it. I don't even think maybe we loosely planned on releasing them, but we kind of just sat on it for a while. So
yeah, and I know that we released some episodes before the new year, just because we did that. I think we did a New Year's Eve show.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where April Tinsley falls, if it was one of the later ones of 2015 or maybe even the first case we covered of 2016. But
this picture looks like the house or the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
So, is that a single wide?
I don't know.
And
I couldn't tell you anything about a lot of things.
it's like somewhat kept up and somewhat dilapidated.
Right.
But it's kind of scary looking.
Yeah. And he's scary looking, and I don't know if it's just because we know
what he did,
have a good idea of what he did and then what he hid from all these years. The weird thing with this case to me was always the taunting of the community. Mm-hmm. And it almost seemed like, he couldn't stop himself from taunting the community and taunting the police when he might have gotten away. I actually, looking back on it now, he wouldn't have gotten away because there was DNA
right. But
at the original crime scene.
What I wonder is what his record looks like after 88, from 88 to now. What kind of trouble did he get in, or did he not get into any trouble?
Yeah,
is this a one and done thing? Because we've often argued with like the Amy Mihalovic case, is that a one and done thing, and is that even something that we should have on our radar? I mean, when you think of like the show Mindhunter and you talk about profiling, should we have this one and done perpetrator mentality on our list of possibilities?
I think so. And I tell you why, because I think sometimes the murder is a reaction to another crime that has been committed. And that sometimes that individual may have woke up that morning and the initial crime is premeditated. Mm-hmm. That there's some thought that, hey, today I might go out and commit this crime. And then they do. And then the reaction to that is murdering the individual that could tell on you. Mm-hmm. And I think we see that more often with child killings, because it's such a heinous crime to abduct and sexually assault or rape a child.
Right.
That I think that the reaction is they freak out afterwards.
Freak out!
Well, and if we're to believe Jacob Wetterling's killer, that's kind of what he said. He went into kind of instant panic and he killed Jacob Wetterling. And it sounds to me like this could be a similar situation where this guy, he's a sick bastard and he can't control himself enough that he's not. Who knows if he was even looking for a child that day? But for whatever reason, this was the victim that he took. And let's not mince words here. This is the victim he selected.
Right.
Because at some point, he chose to pull this poor girl into his van. And then when he couldn't react, when he couldn't handle what he chose to do, he murdered this little girl. Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, you try to taunt the people. It's throwing salt on the wound.
Well, and we did speculate that this individual could be a one-off killer because we wondered why he would be go unnoticed and unapprehended for so long, especially with leaving so much evidence and DNA evidence. Now, the thing here is you almost have to wonder on those 2 occasions. It's actually 4 occasions, but it was only 2 dates. Okay, so he leaves incriminating, taunting evidence at 4 different sites, but it's responded to by law enforcement on 2 different dates. So when you think about it, you have to wonder, Was that taunting of the police, was the going and doing those despicable acts and leaving disgusting things at 4 different locations, was that some way of him controlling himself, stopping himself from doing this again? Was that good enough for him to get him by a little bit longer? Did he kill April, and did he freak out about killing April and realize, look, these crimes that I did commit before the murder, I wouldn't mind necessarily doing that again, but
Right.
look, it led to murder and I can't do that again. So is this another way for him to infringe his pleasure and things that he likes and things that he wants on society and on that community without getting himself into further trouble? Because you got to wonder, if they got this dude's DNA, you got to wonder, how much time are they spending looking through other stuff to see if he's connected to anything else?
Yeah.
Do you think he'd be forthcoming if he was, it didn't sound like he was super eager to say what he did to April or the details of the crime, but it sounds like he gave them plenty of it eventually.
Right. It's funny because this initial sketch looks a lot more like him. Sorry,
No, you're fine.
I think the thing too is like, so it seems like I will kill again on the barn, and it looks like in the letter he says something about killing again.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this is a one-off, right? I wonder if it's like, okay, he couldn't control his urges to molest her, and then that led to killing her.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the whole, I'm going to do it again. Maybe there was a part of him that wanted to get caught, and almost like, I'm a monster for whatever reason, and I'm going to do this again. And maybe maybe subconsciously through that, he's taunting the police, but not really taunting, but also like almost like trying to help them out a little bit, where he didn't have the balls to go in there and turn himself in, but maybe he was trying to be like, hey, look, I'm a monster. I'm going to do this again. It's like
almost killing yourself, like wanting to commit suicide, but not being able to go through with it in some way.
Yeah.
And that's weird, because when I was speaking with, and I wish I remembered this lady's name, and I hate to just keep saying this lady, but we met several people that day, and in my defense, she may not have told me her name. But anyway,
Paula Abdul.
One thing I said to her was just that. I said, that sometimes, and this has been, this firsthand, but this has also been my experience from covering these cases. You've learned this firsthand from talking to an individual very close to a case that had something to actually do with the case, and that will
confess to a case,
that will face charges. Yeah, we'll spend some time behind bars eventually, but
one day we'll be able to talk about that.
The thing is, firsthand, and I know this from doing this long enough, that sometimes these sick bastards, sometimes they want to tell somebody what they've done, because the guilt is eating and eating and eating away at them. And I told the lady when we talked about it, I said, look, one thing that's weird about this case with the taunting of the police and the community, you almost wonder, did this individual felt like they had to tell somebody, and this was as close as they could get to doing it by leaving notes and disgusting items at these different locations.
Well, let me say something about John D. Miller. The D is for douchebag. You's a piece of shit. But for whatever reason, and I don't know why this is or how this came to be, you raped a child, you murdered a child, and you're going to get everything that's coming to you in jail. And that's just how it's always been. So prepare for that.
And I'm looking forward to the news that's going to come out with this thing, maybe this week, maybe it's a month from now, I don't know. But I'm looking forward to seeing where and what kind of sentence John D. Miller will get.